Hi, Shauna. Thanks for being on my podcast today.
Yes, I'm so excited to be here. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, so you know what? I'm excited to talk about your nonprofit. It's called A Million Thanks. And you started this when you were in high school, which is just mind blowing to me that you stepped out in such great faith when you were so young. I'd love for you to share a little bit about it. It was back in 2004 and it's all about helping military. So tell us what inspired this nonprofit.
Yes. So it was back when I was a freshman in high school in 2004. And my high school required community service hours to be completed every single year. And so, like most high schools have that now, if they didn't already back then. And so we were given a list of things that we could do. And it was everything from beach cleanup to, going, helping serve the homeless, going to elderly care facilities and interacting with, I mean, it was just a laundry list of different things that you could do. And I looked through the list and a lot of them seemed really interesting. But to be honest, none of them really tugged at my heartstrings. And I really wanted to do it out of the joy of my heart. I wanted it to be something that I looked forward to going to, that I looked forward to doing if it was something that I was going to be doing for all 4 years. I wanted it to be something that really just excited me. And nothing really stood out to me. And so I came home and I was talking to my dad, and my dad is very, very servant hearted and has always participated. He has lots of businesses and always had participated in different community give back types of things. And so I said, you know what? I think I would like to do something around the military. And at that time, 2004 was a couple years after 9/11. Just shortly after the war had started. So it was just in the news a lot. Our military was in the news a lot, both positive and negative. And so it was just something that was circulating and that I saw a lot. And so I said, I think I would like to do something for the military. And my dad said, well, we've collected letters for the military in the past, with his various businesses. Why don't you do something like that? And I thought, okay, now that's something that I could get behind, that, I could get our school behind and local community behind. And so I said, well, okay. I said, but I feel like I need a goal. Like I am such a finish line person. I
I
need like
love
a
it.
goal. And so I said, well, how many do you think I should collect? He goes, I don't know. Why don't you just collect 1 million? And it was a total tongue in cheek thing. I mean, he was probably doing work on his computer and not really paying attention to what I was, fully what I was trying to accomplish there. And so I walked away and I was like, that's pretty cool. It's kind of like thanks a million. Like, people use that phrase all the time.
Yes.
I'll call it thanks a million. And so as things kind of started to go along, I ended up looking up a website. I was like, well, I should probably start a website, to tell people about this. So I typed in thanks a million and it was already taken. And I was like, well, that just foiled my plan. And so I just rearranged it and we decided to call it a million thanks. But how it really started was through just community service. And truthfully, I did not start it to be a nonprofit organization. I did not start it to even think I was going to get anywhere near collecting 1 million thank you letters. I really just wanted to see if I could get my school involved, if I could get my local community involved, businesses, churches, youth groups, things in my, I'm in Southern California, so just kind of the local Southern California community involved. And so I approached my high school principal and some of the administration and asked if my high school, which was I went to Orange Lutheran, if they could be kind of the home base for it, and the high school could be the place where people would bring their letters. And they quickly got on board, and I did a presentation at our all school chapel to kind of present the idea and basically said, hey, if you don't have a community service project, come join mine,
I
type of thing.
love it.
And so we started in March of 2004 as just a local community service project.
Oh my goodness. I love the backstory. I love that you were just like, I don't want to just serve anywhere where I don't have my heart in it. I think some kids just take it like a check on the box, right? Like I just am going to do this wherever they tell me to go. But you were like, I want to have a love or a joy when I serve. And so that's a really cool attitude. First of all, I don't think everyone always has that attitude when they serve. And so I think that's a great place for someone to think like, am I serving because I have to, or am I serving because I want to and it's something I'm passionate about. So then I love that you and your dad had this conversation. He threw out 1 million. It's like, let's set this goal, which is a lot of letters to collect, which you did end up reaching that goal, Shauna, which is so amazing. So I'd love to hear a little bit about that. So tell us how quickly you reached the goal and a little bit behind the process of getting the letters, all to the military. Did you,
Yeah.
how did you know what to do?
I didn't. That was the really fun part about this is it was like a figure it out as we go along type of thing because I really had no plan. To give you a visual, a million letters would fill a if you ever seen like a grocery store semi truck, like an 18-wheeler semi truck,
Yes.
it would fill it floor to ceiling, front to back. So
Oh,
it would
wow.
it's a lot of letters. And
Wow.
so really what how it kind of happened is my at that original kickoff ceremony at my high school, we actually had some local news channels show up and they covered it, and I did a couple interviews with them and it got out to the local Southern California market. And about 2 weeks later, I get a call from a national news market saying they wanted to
Wow.
also do an interview. They had heard about the organization, or at the time, the campaign. And so I did a national news interview about 2.5 weeks after I had officially launched. And so really it was the media that got the word out and that let people know. By that time we basically had like, I mean, it was 2004. So like the internet was like not what it is today. We
Right.
had this Word document looking website that basically just said, hey, if you are an individual, a church, a school, an organization, and you want to write a thank you letter to our military, write it and send it to us and we'll make sure it gets overseas. You don't have to have the connections or anything like that. You just get it to us here in Southern California and we'll get it overseas. And so basically that's perpetually how we've done it ever since. No longer at my high school anymore, but people send their letters to us and we send them overseas. And so I started doing interview after interview for probably, I mean, consistently 4 to 6 months after that. I mean, multiple times a week,
Wow.
radio interviews, TV interviews. It just spread like wildfire, which was so helpful. So my high school started to get all of the letters in, and then we would have what I called sorting parties. During the week and on the weekends, where students would come in and they would help us open all the boxes. They would take the letters out of all the envelopes because we don't need that extra paperweight in there of the envelopes. They would count all the letters. They would kind of sort it and stack it into like size bundles, and we would repackage it to send it overseas. And so that's continuously how we have sorted our letters since then. We've had different volunteer groups kind of, as the different stages kind of, when I went to college, it was like a lot of college students. And after that, it was like my workplace. And, just a lot of different places have really stepped up to help us organize and sort these letters to send overseas. But so
Mm.
originally I was thinking about, trying to get them over on military planes, get them overseas on military planes. But what I found is that a lot of times those military planes that are bringing over, food and supplies and things like that, it just kind of sits in warehouses on pallets. It doesn't really get, at least letters wouldn't get distributed very quickly. So simultaneously, as we were kind of coming up with that, like, oh, this probably isn't going to work, we started getting emails from people saying, hey, my son is serving overseas. My cousin is serving overseas. My best friend is serving overseas. How can you get letters to them? Can I give you their address? So that ended up
Mm.
becoming the most efficient, effective way to distribute these letters is we send a box of about 1,000 letters to one specific service member, and then they're able to spread that out within their unit. So whether they put it in kind of the general mess hall area, whether it's a chaplain that sees, lots of military rotating on a daily basis, handing them out. And so that's how we've always done it. And so it actually only took us 6 months to reach that 1 million letter mark, which
That's
was,
fast.
so we started in March and we reached it by the beginning of November. So it was very, very quick.
Yeah. Oh my goodness. I can't even imagine a truck, a semi truck filled with letters from top to bottom. That's a million letters. That's
Yeah.
a great visual, Shauna, because that's a lot that you like. Again, it started as this great idea. Now you're like, oh my goodness, how do I manage all this?
Right.
Right. And so you have sorting parties and kids are getting on board, and all these people are earning their service hours, and they're probably having the most fun doing it and really seeing the joy in serving and giving back. And I love that you found people to get the letters to, like a service person, and then, they divvy it up through their units, because again, it's like, how do you get them out there? So I love that you figured it all out. God just gave you all the answers to your questions. But probably people want to know now, do you still take letters? And if so, you were telling me like you still get a lot, right? Do you still get things sent now? Do they go to you? It's not the school anymore.
Right. Yeah. So we have a mail intake facility that all the letters come to. It's still here in Southern California. And then we have various groups that will help sort the letters. So we do have like a senior living facility. They absolutely love to do it. So they're
Mm.
like one of our biggest volunteers. We have different just organizations or schools that will kind of take on that mail and bring it back after they've sorted it and repackaged it and all that. But we still do get about 1,000 letters a day. We
Wow.
just a little while ago, we crossed our 14 millionth letter threshold. So
Wow.
we've collected 14 million letters in the last 20 years. March of this year was our 20-year anniversary, which I don't feel like I should be old enough to be able to have something that's 20 years old. But yeah,
Wow.
so we still are collecting letters, and I would say our big, we do collect them year round, but probably our two biggest times of year are holiday letters, so around Christmas time, as well as around Valentine's Day.
Oh, that's so cool. Yeah, well, and Veterans Day is just around the corner. So I love that we're kind of highlighting this. So if people want to get on board and send their letters in saying thank you to all the people that are serving and helping with our keep our freedom in the country. And Veterans Day is November 11th. I think this episode rolls out the week before. And Christmas is just around the corner as well. So I love that. And I love that you have a retirement home that sorts them. Do you need more sorters? Like if someone wanted to help, let's say someone's listening right now and they're like, I want to help. I want to be part of this. Obviously writing a letter is one way. What else? What's another way?
Yeah, so I would say probably the top 3 ways to get involved. Obviously, writing a letter is huge, and it doesn't really cost a whole lot. You just again get your letters to us, and we'll send them overseas, and it's a great way to participate. The second way would be a donation. It costs a lot of money to send. I don't know if anyone's been to the
Oh.
post office recently. I know a lot of us don't send letters anymore, but if you've been to the post office recently and you're trying to even send a little package, it's quite expensive. And unfortunately, we don't get any you're a great charity discount or anything like that from the post office. So donations really, really help with our ability to send as many letters as possible overseas. And so that's a great way. And we appreciate that as well. And then lastly, if you are local to Southern California and you want to come pick up letters to sort, we usually will give you 2 to 3 crates. If you're a larger, either like school or organization, we'd be happy to give you more. And we give you just pretty simple instructions on how to do it. And it doesn't take a lot of time. And so you can send us an email on our website. Our website is amillionthanks.org. You can send us an email on the website and we'll be happy to set you up if you are local to Southern California.
I love that. Oh, I didn't even think about the cost to mail it. Yeah, that's right. That's a huge fee. I mean, postage is crazy. Just even mailing my books when I ship a book to someone, it gone up from a couple bucks to it's almost $5. So it's just
Yeah.
crazy how much things cost now. And so I can only imagine a big box of letters is very costly. So now is there a link on the website to make a donation? Is that how someone would
Yes.
make a donation? Okay.
Yep, it's
And
right on the front page. So we have a million thanks really is kind of a one-stop shop for military support. So we have a couple of different initiatives that we participate in. So you'll kind of see what that looks like. We send letters overseas. We our other big initiative is we grant higher education scholarships to children of fallen military. And so if
I
you want to
love that.
donate to the letter initiative, to the Fund a Scholar initiative, or just a general donation to kind of an unrestricted, we are happy for everything. And if you want to send a letter, under the send a letter button, it gives you really great instructions on what to write if you've never done it before, how to send,
Mm.
where to send, all of that.
All of it's so it's a millionthanks.org.
Yes.
Okay, I love that. I love that you guys do scholarships as well. I did not know that, Shauna. That's amazing. So I'm just curious. I know sometimes we want to honor someone, maybe if we had military in the family. Like I know your dad threw out the idea of helping, the war had been happening on the TV, so it was fresh in your head. But do you have family that serve? Like what you think birthed this joy to help the military?
I mean, truthfully, it was from the Holy Spirit. I
Mm.
don't have any, I mean, aside from my grandfathers, who I had heard a little bit of their time in the service, but that was long before I was born. So aside from them, I had no close family or friends in the military. I truthfully didn't really even know all that much about it. I really do think it was the Holy Spirit just nudging me to serve an area and a group of people that really at the time, well, I would say generally are always underserved, but especially at that time. And and it was just something, I don't know, it just, I felt that tug on my heart, and that's the only way I can explain it, because there would be no other logical reason for me to start this, given the fact that I really didn't have any experience or any, in-depth knowledge of, our military or anybody who had served in our military at that time.
I love that. I love that the Holy Spirit just kind of nudged you and said, "This is an area I want you to serve." So let's say someone's listening right now and they're getting that nudging and they're like, "Oh my goodness, this feels too big. Like this is this God-sized dream. Like this is big, Shauna. I mean, you've sent out 14 million letters. Let's keep it real. That's a crazy amount. A million just in the first 6 months." And they're nervous. They're like, I mean, what if God does help me do this? Like, that's going to be a huge chunk of time, energy. So, what would you say to them? Like, were there anything helpful when starting up your nonprofit or any pearls of wisdom? And just like, how would you encourage them to go for it, even when it feels scary?
Yeah, I would say the very first thing, obviously a lot of prayer, and just prayer that all the obstacles and all the roadblocks would be removed. That was something, truthfully, that I didn't really pray a lot about, not for any other reason other than at the time I was 14, and it just, I don't know, that
Wow.
was at the forefront of my mind to like ask, God to remove any obstacles, but I think time and time again he showed his faithfulness when there were roadblocks, that he really cleared away, and it really brought my attention toward him of, you know what, this is, if this is a dream and this is a vision that is coming from the Lord, then he will provide a way and he will make a way. And so I would say that first and foremost is, prayer for courage and strength, and to remove all of those obstacles, because there always will be obstacles when you decide to do anything or start anything. The second thing would be to surround yourself with people who are ready to run the race with you. And that doesn't mean
Mm,
that they have to go from start to finish. Maybe they're only meant to go the first mile or the first quarter mile even. But surrounding yourself with people, whether that's people who are strong in their faith that can help pray alongside you, whether that's their area of expertise is what you're looking at doing. So whether you need somebody with a little bit of extra financial help, that's not your skill set or your expertise, finding the people who are skilled in the areas that you're not, and that are just ready to build you up and to go with you. Our The verse that I had always chosen for a million thanks is First Thessalonians 5:11. Therefore encourage one another and build each other up, just as in fact you are doing. And obviously that goes for our work here at A Million Thanks and what we do to encourage our service member and serve them, but also for people who are looking at starting anything in life, or setting down a path that is going to be challenging, is if you are an encouragement to other people, then you are going to be encouraged by others, and you are going to be
mm.
set apart and lifted up. And so that's something that's always really stuck with me. Um and then I think, the third thing is you just got to do it. There's never going to be a right time. It's
Right.
never going to be perfect, setting a perfect scenario. Well, just wait until, and there's always going to be a next thing. There's always going to be something. And so you really just have to set a date and do it. You just have to go for it. And you're not always going to be prepared. And you just kind of have to take it one step at a time. And I think a lot of times we get overwhelmed by the large, again, I'm a finish line person. So thinking of A to Z and every letter in between, is like, oh, how am I going to do that? How am I going to do that? But that's very overwhelming. You really just get from A to B. Okay, take a breath, reset, B to C, take a breath, reset, and just keep moving forward. And so I would say that those were a lot of those things were kind of unknowingly what I did, and looking back, I'm like, "Whoo, I'm sure glad I did that." Or I'm sure glad, the Holy Spirit provided a way for that, because I think that's what really, really aided in the success of A Million Thanks.
Oh my gosh, you gave so many great pearls right there. I mean, all of them. First of all, 14 years old, Shauna, like that right there is so exciting for me. Someone has a daughter or a son and they've got this big dream, like tell them to go for it, right? Like you were 14 years old. Like that is amazing. And I love your idea of just take the next step. Sometimes we don't even know. Like, I know for me, when I started this podcast, I felt like God called me to do it. And it's not necessarily a nonprofit like yours, but it's still a way to help encourage others and minister to others. Right. And I just remember going, I don't know what to do. Like, I'm not techie, but I just felt God asking me to do it. So it was just, well, okay, how do you start a podcast? So buy a microphone. Okay. Step one, A to B. Okay. Second, get software on your computer, figure out how to do, you just take little steps. Next thing you know, you've launched your first episode and, get your next guest. I mean, it's just, I think sometimes we get overwhelmed with like, it's got to be this big, but you know what? It doesn't have to be. Just start with where God's telling you to go right there. Like, sometimes I feel like He doesn't always give us the next thing until we take that first step. Right. And so I
Yeah.
think that's really good. Yeah.
Yes, absolutely.
So I love that you have this saying, the power of one. When we were on the phone, you mentioned this. You said how one person can make a difference around the world. And so tell me more about that. And like when people ask you about your nonprofit, is this something you encourage people with, the power of one?
Yeah, and it's something I don't even remember really where. I mean, it's not like it's a completely unique phrase or anything like that, but when I was younger, throughout high school and college and into my 20s, I was often invited to speak to different groups, whether it was volunteer organizations or high schools, or it was a lot of schools, a lot of either elementary or high schools, or service organizations that involved youth. And so I really just kind of had this idea of the power of one, and kind of what I was talking about earlier is what how one person truly can make a difference. And I know there's so many cliche terms around that, and people just think, oh, it must be so much easier than you think it is, or whatever. But for me, it was really the idea, not that one person does it all or that you
Right.
alone are doing it, but it has to start somewhere. And even if you're not the one that ends up carrying it to the finish line, even if you're just the spark, um that's significant. And so
Yes.
the power of one person, even if you have the idea and maybe you're like, oh, I am not a front person, I don't want to be out there, I don't want to be, and you come up with the idea and you hand it off. I mean, that is still so significant. And so I really encouraged a lot of young people, as I was talking, to just be that one person. um be that one person that sparks a change, be that one person that decides to go the other direction, in service to others, be that one person that is going to spark something in somebody else, because it happens more often than we know and more often than we realize. And so it was really just always my encouragement to others to stand out and be bold. And I think probably now more than ever, maybe I should get back out on the road and and talk about that a little bit more. But I think now more than ever, especially now having two young daughters and raising them, it is so important right now to have a voice and to be the spark for change and to be the spark for serving others and to be the spark in igniting somebody else's faith and coming up with big ideas and big dreams and not playing small. And so that was really always my encouragement, back then to young people. And you know, who knows what it did, but I always like I would always pray before I would go out and speak, like, oh, let that one person just hear it. Just one. If
Hmm.
it's crowd of 300 or 500 or 1,000, like, let there just be one, because that that's really all it takes.
Yeah. Because you know what? I love when you do a message like that because the Holy Spirit's the one that's nudging that person, right? You're just the person relaying the message that the Lord's given you. And you're now kind of like getting them excited for what the Holy Spirit's already been maybe tugging on their own heart. Because I have a message similar where I talk about taking that leap of faith and, talking about the Israelites where they stepped into the water before the water parted, right? Like the Red Sea, the water was already parted, right? But and the Jordan River, like they stepped into the water. Like before. Sometimes God's asking us to take that step. And so I love because sometimes it's not up to us to tell that person what to do. Like that, we're just the message saying you can make a difference. You can make an impact with God's help, with God as your, co-pilot, you can make a major change in the world. And yes, you're just one person, but God is going to be the person that's going to make the big difference, right? And so as you oh, surrender it to him and he works through you. But I just think sometimes we're nervous. It's like, whoa, my gosh. And I love this quote. I think it was Mark Batterson. I don't know if you've heard of him, but he says, if your God-sized dream doesn't scare you, it's not big enough. And so
Yes.
I just want to say to someone right now that's like, oh my gosh, it's like, well, that's good. Yet you're scared and nervous because you know what? That means you're not going to try to do it in your own strength. You're going to use God's strength. And I love that we can make a difference. Just one person can make an impact. And you know what? You don't know who's going to be blessed by it. That audience you spoke with, there's probably way more than just one, Shauna. But even if
Yeah.
it's just for one, God wants us to share our stories and help someone. And so I love that so much. Now, I remember you were telling me that you, during the time you were 14, you got to go meet the president. Is that right? During the beginning of this launch of the letters?
Yes. So my goal from the very beginning was if we ever hit a million thank you letters, I wanted to present the framed 1 millionth letter to President Bush as our commander in chief. And so that was my goal for the very,
Mm.
again, it was like, I didn't know how I was going to get there, how it was going to happen. I mean, it was just, I'm like, this is what we're going to do. So we had ended up sending a letter and saying, basically, hi, my name is Shauna Fleming. I started this organization and I would love to present the 1 millionth letter to you. And so this was probably at the end of October, or in October, that I had sent the letter. And the first week of November, we get a phone call. This is like back when we had like home phones with caller ID on them.
Yes. I
I
love that.
Yeah, I got a phone call, and on the caller ID, it actually said White House, comma, the.
Oh
Now,
my
if you're
gosh.
not native to Southern California, you won't know this, but in Southern California, we have a restaurant called the White House. And so I was thinking that my parents had like booked this like fancy dinner and they were calling to confirm the reservation. I don't know, like a celebratory dinner. So I didn't answer the phone. One of my parents did, and they said, "Nope, the phone is for you." And it was, in fact, the White House in Washington,
Wow.
saying President Bush received your letter, and he would love to, if your family would come out to a private ceremony in the Oval Office, and you can present the 1 millionth letter. And can you come in 2 weeks? And
My
so
goodness.
not a lot of planning on their end, apparently. But so we were there just before Thanksgiving, and we were able to spend about 15 minutes to in the Oval Office, my parents, my younger brother, and the first thing he said, I walked into the Oval Office. First of all, the Secretary of Education was the appointment before me, and the Secretary of Education was in there all of maybe 45 seconds. Like the whole team shuffled in. 45 seconds later, the whole team shuffled out. So I'm thinking, well, if the Secretary of Education gets 45 seconds, I'm due for about 6. Um, and so I was like, oh gosh, well, whatever, it's going to be great. So, we walked in, and the very first thing, he shook my hand. He asked how basketball season was going. I played basketball for my high school, and that was the first thing he asked. How's basketball going? And so he ended up giving us a little tour of all the fun things in the Oval Office. And, we presented the letter, and so he said, well, this is really important work that you're doing. And I expect that you're going to keep it up. So I'm like, oh, I guess I didn't really think, like, now that I've hit the mill, like, what are we doing now? But when the president says you got to keep going, you just keep going. So I guess that's why we are 20 years and 14 million letters later. But it was absolutely spectacular. And we had a lot of support from the Department of Defense and the Office of the President, throughout the next couple of years. So I feel very grateful for that. And it was just a really kind of full circle moment, again, of
Wow.
starting it. So
Oh my goodness. I can't even imagine because you're like, oh yeah, I hit my goal. So now what?
yeah,
And you're probably thinking, I'm done. I hit my goal. And he's going, I can't wait for you to keep going. And you're like, okay, I guess I'm doing more. But what an
yeah.
amazing testimony. Like 14 million letters. Like, Shauna, that's so exciting. And I know you wrote a book and it's titled A Million Thanks as well. And it has some of the letters in there. Do you have like a favorite one to
I
read
do
by chance?
I do have a favorite. It's always been my favorite letter. And so I love it because it is, I don't know, it's just like, to me, it was like the quintessential letter of, like, I don't know, just and he drew this amazing picture. If you ever see it in the book, he drew this picture of a soldier with an American flag, and it was like, in perfect paragraph, where I was like, wow, this is the most perfect letter I've ever seen. But and so it says, "Dear soldiers, I am a fourth grade student in Laguna Niguel, California. I would like to extend my sincere appreciation to you and your families for protecting our country. Thank you very much for your courage, sacrifice, and patriotism so we can have a normal life at home. I'll take my responsibility, like you, to continue to be a straight A student. When I grow up, I'll be ready to serve our country. Have a good Easter and best luck to you. Love, Charles Leo. It
Wow,
was like
that
my
is good.
just one of my favorite I mean, just the things that the letters that we receive, I mean, from every age group and every population. I mean, we receive letters from prisons, prisoners in prison.
Wow.
We've received letters from, World War II veterans that are sharing their experience of what it was like, and Vietnam veterans, saying, I never got the thanks. And so I'm passing it along to you for what I never got, to,
Mm.
little kids and the cutest little pictures, to like, oh my gosh, we could have a whole, that old show, The Kids Say the Darndest Things. Like, we could have had an entire book of just like kids say the darndest things in their letters. I mean, just funny things, and like, just, I mean, it was like really the highlight, getting to go through all of these letters over the course of the years, and to just see the heartfelt messages, the funny messages, the beautiful messages that people would write.
Mm. I love that. It's kind of wild to think because fourth grade, when this, came out, he's probably an adult. Maybe he even serves in the military. Maybe someday he's going to get one of your letters. Like, wouldn't that be such a cool full circle moment if
Yes.
he got one? Like, I don't know. I like to think things like that. Like your influence, so in his life changed maybe the trajectory. Maybe he wasn't going to serve. Now he serves. I don't know. But it's
Yeah.
just interesting how your idea, how, I mean, think about all the people that wrote the letters. They had it impacted them as well, right? Not just the people receiving the letters. So it's just a cool way that so many hearts were touched.
Yeah, and I can't tell you how many, like, pen pal relationships were formed as well, of people,
Mm.
because one of the things that people always ask us is like, "Can I put my email address or my address or whatever?" And I always tell people, like, "Whatever you're comfortable with, absolutely," because there are so many times, I mean, this is the whole point, is to connect our military with back home, because a lot of times why this is so meaningful to them is because a lot of times they don't have a close family or friends back home to engage in regular communication with them. And again, this, back earlier when communication was a little bit, more difficult, although now it depends on what part of the world they are, but it can be just as difficult nowadays. But just to get that letter of somebody who they don't even know thanking them for their service, I mean, is just, and the back and forth that, we've had schools say, "Oh yeah, we've had this, this class like formed a pen pal from A Million Thanks, and here we are 3 years later, like still going back and forth with him. He's back
Mm.
home. We've had like people do meetups after. I mean, it is so neat to see the impact that complete strangers are having on one another.
That is so cool. Oh my goodness. See, just think that idea that happened as a 14-year-old, the Holy Spirit. Like, I just get excited if someone's listening right now. Maybe they have an idea God's birthing in them, and just think of the impact. And, you know, again, everyone makes an influence and impact. Doesn't have to have 14 million, right? But like just one person. But oh, I just think this is so powerful. And to the military, again, we are biggest thanks to you. We are so thankful for all that you do to keep us with the freedoms that we have here in America. And Veterans Day, I encourage so many of you guys to write letters and get them out to them so they can get them over Veterans Day as well as Christmas, since I think that will be really special. Okay, I love to end my podcast with one question, and it's, what books besides the Bible have impacted you the most? Are you a reader, Shauna? Do you like to do a lot of reading?
I've really picked up my reading in the last couple of years. I have never really been that big of a reader. And so but I have been, I'm very big into personal development books. That is probably like my biggest one. The one that it's a little bit less personal development and a little bit more just along on more of the psychology lines, but it's called You Are the One You've Been Waiting For,
Mm.
by Charles Schwartz. And that book really, I don't know, I love to learn about relationships, and where people came from and why people are the way they are, and just how that plays out in relationships and parenting and all of those things. um so that has been a favorite that I've read recently, and my next favorite one coming up, I have not started it yet, but is called Habits of the Household, and it is
Oh.
rhythms for Christian parenting and Christian households, and how you can set up rhythms that really aid in your life at home. And so that is the next season that we are coming in, as we have a 5 year old and a almost 2.5 year old. I'm like, okay, better set up some rhythms now. So, but I'm super big into like getting those type of books under my belt because
Yeah. Well, yeah, because you know what? It's really important that we continually grow, right? And each time we try to become the better version of ourselves. And I love those kind of spiritual development books too. I love Christian books that help us, point us to the Bible, point us to Christian truths, and get us to become better versions of ourselves. And especially with parenting, right? I think parents, our kids definitely bring out areas we need to work on, right? They definitely
yes.
know how to
Well, and
expose some.
that's where that first book, that You Are the One That You've Been Waiting For, that's where that one came, because I was like, whew, why am I getting so triggered by like, just this little it's not even that big of a deal. And then you start to realize like all the things that, my therapist always says, you're every age you ever were, like all the things
Yes.
from growing up that are, good, bad, and otherwise, they shape who you are and how you react to things, and what. So I'm like, okay, I'll read the parenting books. That's great, but ultimately, I got to figure out why I am the way I am, in certain aspects. So
Oh, yeah. So,
good.
Sean, I have a book to tell you about. So, it was
Okay,
my life changing book, and it's called How We Love Our Kids. And it's by Mylan and Kay Yurkovich. Have you heard of it?
heard of it?
Yeah. Okay. So, the whole point of it, it's not a parenting book to help you give you like skills to parent. It's to, again, work on you because you,
Yes.
and so it's all about going back to your childhood. And so, since you talked about that and your triggers, oh, it is phenomenal. It changed my life. Like, if
Okay,
I could tell
I'm
anyone
adding
about one
that.
book, yeah, that's the
We're
one. So,
taking a quite a big trip here coming up, and I'm like, okay, I got to get a couple. I mean, with kids, so I mean, how much reading am I really going to get done with kids? But I'm going to pack that one.
okay, good. I think you're going to love it. And they have a marriage version of it as well. But I started with the parenting one, and you kind of figure out which one you are. And then there's tons of growth steps. It was just life changing to me. But oh my gosh, I have loved this conversation for many reasons. One, it's just inspiring others to say, where can they be and be the one to make the difference? Where can they step out? Maybe it's a God sized dream. Maybe they're just praying right now, God, show me where you can use me. And then those of us that, would like to come on board and help, they can give financially or they can write letters. They can help sort. I'm definitely going to be writing letters and I'm local. So maybe we'll do some sorting as well. I just think it's phenomenal, Shauna. And I am so proud of you for your 14-year-old bold self started this. And 20 years later, you've made an enormous impact. And I just love hearing about the pen pals that have formed and just all of it. It's just phenomenal. So thank you so much for being my guest today and sharing your story.
Thank you. I'm so honored. I appreciate it.